Happy Friday, everyone. Today I chose a topic that's more philosophical rather than technical or one that's relevant to my industry. And it's really to solve to be happy. How do you solve for happy? According to Mo Gawdat, Chief Business Officer at Google X. So imagine plotting out all the moments that you are happy as you recalled them across this graph, trying to find something in common, something that they all had in common. That's what this particular executive and engineer, Mo Gawdat, did many years ago. And he took many hours and he actually found 92 moments from his life where he felt that he was most happy. And yet he could not identify something in common until he thought more critically, until he read about what others experienced as well. And so I'm going to share with you some inspiring lessons that I think will energize you for the weekend here at All Out Coach, because that's one of my biggest goals, to go live on Monday mornings, on Friday mornings before work at All Out Coach, in order to inspire us for the week and the weekend ahead. And so, without continuing to add to the suspense, I'm going to first start with how he defines happiness, and then work our way to explain how and what are the reasons for how he came to that conclusion. He defines happiness as simply when the events are greater or equal to your expectations. So when the events that you observe or the outcomes of what your expectations are actually met. So if you consider your childhood, right? When you're a child, you were happy in that moment, right? As long as you get that toy, as long as your expectations are met, you're happy in that moment, and that child is not crying. That's what Mo Gawdat reminds us, right? And he simplifies this definition according to the illusions, the 6 illusions that that we have to avoid throughout life, because they are the product of our environment, our industrial revolution, the productivity that we are asked to deliver, as well as the culture, the culture of work, of business. And so these 6 illusions I've listed here, okay, and they also have to do with how our brains are wired. Our brains are wired in order to find acceptance from our fellow humans in our species, right, and to escape threat, because millions of years ago, people lived outdoors, and they also interacted with many other species and animals, right? They had to escape from the tiger. But our thoughts that we have, which are about 400 to 600 words per minute, so are really a reflection of that intricate mechanism that we have, that we're born with. Not all of it, however, which is accurate and which is designed for us to identify happiness. So we are born happy, but our brains and how we think, Mo Gawdat reminds us, are actually designed for us to avoid problems, avoid fear, exaggerate what we see. And so we are able to control our thoughts. So our thoughts do not become reality until we act upon them. So you receive an email that you get angry about, and you may make a very aggressive comment, what you're going to do to that person who sent you that email, that said, for example, oh, you worked with your colleague because you wanted to get a promotion, didn't you? Right? Or you can give it some more thought, not react, not be as aggressive as you initially thought. And so it's no longer a reality then. So this is one of the illusions that keeps us from being happy. The second one is knowledge. All right. Our knowledge is continuously evolving, yet we are the product of the assumptions that our friends, our colleagues make, right? We move, but we move and we continue to apply our knowledge based on assumptions that may be dated, right, from years ago. And so our knowledge has to continue to evolve, right? In terms of what we consider to be true may not indeed be true, right? And our ego, our self-image, how we see ourselves, is often the limitation of how happy we may consider ourselves to be. We are only able to see how others observe us just based on our physiology, where our eyes are. Mo Gawdat states, right, in his review, in his book, and in his interviews, right? So we only see ourselves in the mirror, but our self-image, is often exaggerated. It's underestimated or it's exaggerated, and so it often is another barrier to our happiness. The fourth, and probably one of the most important ones, is the time. Okay, time is a dimension that we cannot control. And we think much too often about the past or the future, yet we live in the present. So even when we go through a particular day, difficult day, for example, yesterday, we didn't live in the past. We didn't live yesterday. Yesterday, you're living in that moment. Just like tomorrow, you'll live in that moment. Yet if you're preoccupying yourself with thinking about the past too much, or about the future, the expectations that you may have, that is going to keep you from being happy. So this is in essence, a definition of happiness that equates it to peace, right? Feeling that inner peace, right? That peace is what your happiness is. So then, Albert Einstein, he, in his theory of relativity, he describes the fact that it's actually us that we are moving, but time is something that we cannot measure. Time is there, it exists, but time is not really moving. It's us. We are the ones that are moving, right? And so how we perceive time it also is different based on the culture. In the West, as Mo Gawdat describes, he considers it to be a clock-based culture. When we go from one meeting to another, and we have one meeting that lasts for 30 minutes to another, regardless of the nature of the discussion, right? We are very regimented. We are ruled by time, and that's why we're productive. That's what the Industrial Revolution taught us to do, right? We're ruled by time. Whereas in the rest of the world, it's more of an events-based culture rather than a clock-based culture, where you prioritize what that significance of that event may be rather than the time. And if you think about some of the most memorable meetings that you've had, probably they ran over. You had some brainstorming, you had real-time interaction, debate, disagreement. And so I have a video on this on Instagram, on one of my weekly Instagram lives, which I titled "Rule Time, Don't Let Time Rule You." It's when you understand that concept of how you can better manage time is when you are able to get more things done, and when you're also able to be happier as well, feel happier, feel like you're doing some deep work. So being in the present, right, is the secret to being happy, right? We all know that, but we don't often uh, remind us ourselves of that, in terms of how we think, what we learn, our control. Our control is often overestimated. We try to control ourselves, or put ourselves in the position of control as much as we can. We think that we have the experience, we think that we have the titles, the status, but the pandemic is probably one of the best examples that has taught us that no matter what walks of life we come from, what status we have, what background we have, we all started from a clean slate, right? And what may be threatening to somebody in Italy, in Korea, in China, in Sweden, may be the same that's taking place at the same time in the United States. And so I think that it's an important reminder for many of us that there is this intelligence, pandemic intelligence, that we have to think about today. That is that life is short, things are rough, the stakes are too high and attractive, our dialogue is too precious to waste on blame and pettiness. So live and let live, work and let work, ask and do not assume. All right, it's those assumptions that may keep us and our teams, our businesses, from being happy, where we have this semblance of control, yet that's not present in reality. It doesn't exist. And then fear, of course, right? So fear is something that can be embraced, right? But it's also an illusion. We exaggerate that fear because of how our brains are wired, that fight or flight system that we have, right? And I'm trying to integrate Tim Grover and his lessons as well into Mo Gawdat's book. And Tim Grover speaks about the distinction between doubt and fear. And he says that it's doubt that is the problem, not fear. Because doubt keeps you from avoiding loss, while a fear keeps you from winning. Okay, or helps you avoid basically losing, actually, right? So doubt is what prevents you. It's what trains you to avoid losing. Okay, and so it's doubt that is the problem, not fear. Fear is an illusion, right? So you have to learn how to manage it. So one of the best analogies that Mo Gawdat provides, I think, in the book, is the gaming analogy, where he's an avid video gamer, and so was his son. And you're in these action-packed video games that are now real time, and that include a community of gamers online. They go from one level to another, and you have an avatar. You don't see yourself as you go through the game, but his son got very good at the video games, and he got so good that he was able to go from one level to another, to advance, and but what he noticed his son do was that he would spend a lot of time in the explosions, in the most difficult parts of each level, trying to beat their opponents. And he didn't understand that, because he himself was trying to compete with his son, and he got very good, and he was just advancing from one level to the next, thinking about the future, the next levels. But his son, when he asked him why he spent so much time in the explosions, his son told him, that's where all the fun is taking place. That's where all the fun is. That's where you learn how to avoid problems in the next level. And so one of the biggest conclusions, again, that Mo makes is that your happiness is dependent on how you're able to endure adversity, endure challenges, no matter how predictable they are or how unpredictable they are. You have to learn how to face reality. And so that is what, your illusions of fear, of time, and all these other 6 illusions are keeping you from understanding how to react in that moment. I often speak about positivity, that positivity is a reaction, not a perception of reality. And I think it's very relevant here. So in the spirit of integrating the lessons from Solve for Happy with what I've been speaking about here at All Out Coach, I'll remind you that I have a YouTube video called Make Meetings Memorable, where I talk about the need to moderate not just the time but the tone of meetings, because I reference some of the most memorable meetings that ran over time. Okay, and so that's one of the reasons why that time is an illusion, and as we learn how to manage our time and our energy, actually, is what's critical in being happy, finding that peace, that happiness, and being content with the expectations that you have. So where does happiness really fall along the spectrum of success and leadership as well, since these are the abstract topics that we often aspire to? Yet at All Out Coach, what I try to do is I interpret abstract concepts with concrete terms. Okay, so I try to express abstract concepts using various different formulas or equations that can make them more accessible to us, such as happiness, such as leadership. So the way I define happiness is who is by your side regardless of what happens. So my definition here is a little bit more external rather than internal. But when you really think about it, and when you think about the calls to action that Mo describes, that I'll get to in a few minutes here, you'll understand the connection. Because, see, most of us are trained to aspire to be successful. And Mo himself, the chief business officer at Google X, found that he was at the pinnacle of his career in 2001. He was successful, but he found that he was unhappy. And so instead of prioritizing success and then trying to hope that you are happy, you can turn that around and prioritize being happy and then also finding success. They're not mutually exclusive, according to Mo, which I agree. But at the same time, we don't often prioritize happiness enough. And that's one of the big takeaways there. So I showed the graph earlier of the 3 concepts, the abstract concepts of leadership, of success, and happiness. And let's return to the graphic here. And success is something that you cannot control. You can control your performance, but it's really how others recognize your talent. It's based on the relationships, the networking that you do, where you promote yourself, how, what are the techniques, because performance is bound, like Laszlo Barabashi teaches us in the book The Formula, whereas success has no bounds, it is unlimited. but it's also unpredictable. Happiness is also very difficult to control, as I also concede. It's based on who you have by your side, because no matter how happy you are in that moment, you need to share that happiness with others. And that's why in that default setting of happiness when you're a child, you're probably playing with other kids, probably somewhere outside, and you are sharing how those events met your expectations, or how those events were greater than your expectations. But you wanted to share that, communicate it, because we are a we have a convivial species, right? As humans. And then leadership is a way of life, however. So it's a choice that you make. It's where you take others. It's the number of people you help minus you harm. And that's something that you can control, because if you can control that, the leadership, right? How many people you help, then chances are you increase your probability of being successful and of being happy as well. And so what are the two calls to action from Mo Gawdat, the Chief Business Officer at Google X? Number one, he wrote the book in order to inspire people to make happiness their priority first, like fitness. Like when you go to work out, and as a result of working out, you feel more fit, healthier, you improve your health. So that's the first priority. And you do that by removing your illusions, those 6 illusions that I talked about: your ego, time, your control, your knowledge, your thoughts, first and foremost, right? And then secondly, his goal is to make 10 million other people happier as a result of reading the book. But not just reading the book, he reminds us, because reading the book or watching this live here, watching me share some of his lessons, is only a part of the equation. It's really how you are able to apply that in your life, how you're able to control your thought process, and how content you are with the present, with the moment, with the people that you have by your side. That's going to determine how happy you are. So he wants to help make 10 million other people happy. And whether you're an executive watching this, or you're early in your career, no matter how big your network is, create a goal for yourself to make not just your happiness a priority, but other people's happiness a priority as well. And with those words, with those calls to action, I thank Mo Gawdat for writing a wonderful book, all the lessons that he has shared in his interviews, and I wish all of you a great day ahead and a happy weekend as well. Have a great weekend, my friends. All the best. Tim at All Out Coach. Subscribe to my podcast and YouTube channel. Let's continue the dialogue.